Okay, I just want to thank everybody for coming out to Utah Rust. I am so happy to see you here. It's great to be together again. I want to thank Weave for sponsoring us today, both in location and in Tasty Vittles. A little clap for Weave. What is the website? Weave.com, if anybody wants to check that out.
Weave.
Getweave.com. Yes, getweave.com.
Getweave.com/careers, or just talk to me.
And do you want to give us like the 30-second spiel on what Weave is so that we can properly plug it for our gratitude for hosting us here?
Yeah, Weave helps small business. I think that's our official platform at this point. Marketing keeps rebranding us. So we help small business do their business mostly by, like phones, messaging, CRMs. We import their CRM data, automated reminders, marketing, payments, like anything a business does, we want to be able to help facilitate them do it in just one easy, nice place. No, the call center type stuff is gone.
How big's the revenue? Do you call for step child?
Oh, we just passed 100 million ARR, I think.
Okay.
So.
Profitability?
No, we're not profitable yet, but.
It's not what you want to look for.
But we went from 100. I think we were at 50 million AR 18 months ago, and so we've doubled in 18 months, and that's all through COVID. So, like.
We did the Series B, I think a year and a half, 2 weeks ago.
We just finished D when I started.
Series D?
Yeah.
Keep track of the letters you're on.
We got 70 million from D in 2019. Now, yeah, we're in growth mode again. Yeah.
Hyper growth.
We just opened an office in India, so we
cool.
onboarded, and they're not contractors; they are full Weave employees with full Weave benefits. Bangalore, northern India. We've got 50 people there hired. We've been hiring them faster in India than here because, but it's growing real fast there. We've doubled so.
Excellent.
Cool, so I'll just move to India and apply?
Pretty much. We're looking for managers out there, so.
It's warmer.
Warmer there.
Oh, I don't know if I need warmer.
It's warmer.
Anyway, so I would love to have more of that discussion after the presentation, but I don't want to take up too much time up front at the beginning. And when this gets posted to YouTube, I'll try to put look, if you look down the description, maybe but this will be too late because now we're starting, but I'll put some links to the common time codes, or someone else can help with that if you want to. So if you're watching this on YouTube, would love that support. And if you do like this content, at any point you learn something, you feel like this is really useful for you, please give it a like and subscribe, because it's good for us, it's good for you. And if you don't like it, give it a thumbs down, because every thumb helps. With that said, our presenter tonight is Mariah Peterson. It's true, that's how the algorithms work. And she is talking about, as you can see on the screen right now, going to Rust from Go. Swipping that on me really confused me. And I will let you take it away.
Thank you. So yeah, I didn't put a picture there.
That's what you look like, though.
Pretty much. But there are links in the slide, so I'll make sure the slides get sent out afterward through whatever medium is best, just in case you want to follow the links. So yeah, I work here at Weave, but I also work for myself, good chunk, about half the time. By that saying, I have several meetups I organize. I do a conference. I'm a board member at the Forge Utah Foundation, which is a nonprofit. And then I stream on Twitch, and I speak at conferences, and I speak at meetups, and I have 2 dogs that are going to probably lay on me all night and not move because they're very clingy. One's a COVID puppy, so she's been without separation for 18 months. But yeah, I think just to start our story, I was invited back in April or February maybe to be on a panel for the I have some friends who are Italian, and I say the Italians really love me because they keep asking me to do things. So there's this company out there that has two conferences. One's called Rust Lab and the other's called Go Lab. And they were trying to have micro sessions extended over a multi-month period. And so for one of them, they were going to combine the Rust Lab and Go Lab into this Go versus Rust panel. And they wanted to get people of authority in the space to come speak. I don't know why they chose me. They had about 3,000 other people who've done more Go than I have, but the Italians love me. So they chose me and Steve Francia from the Go team and Jonathan Turner, who has apparently written a lot of the Rust stuff. Very prolific maintainer, and now he does some terminal thing. And Michael Snoyman, who does a lot of content creation and Rust educational content, right? So he does a lot to teach people Rust. So I was definitely the least experienced of everybody that was there. But I figured, oh, and that's the link to the discussion right there.
By the way, real quick, would you mind clicking on share and giving us the link in the chat so we can take it notes? And then also, would you put that in presenter mode so that
Will it be
right now it's only taking up like half the screen?
like that
Yeah. And could you give us the share link for the presentation?
already? In the JITs, is you want it where?
Okay, it's already there.
Where do you want the share link?
In the screen, great.
Okay. Oh gosh. Okay, so then we want this first. Oh my goodness. Oh, I need to get this out of Weave first.
Just copy link should be good.
No, because it'll be restricted. I can export this to my personal and I'll share it after.
Yeah. So how many microservices is we have?
How many microservices or how many GitHub repos? Because those are a different question.
Microservices.
I don't know. GitHub repo I can search.
Okay, well,
We'll get
share the
this-
link afterwards and I'll put it in
Yeah.
the description.
Anyway, so it's a great little video. It was like an hour and a half. I think some people from here watched it.
Excellent.
That was your introduction to me. So I'm coming there with, 3+ Go years ago. See, that's not very much. You expect people to be like at 10, right? Yes, and there are people who've been doing it for 10 years.
I know, you would close up.
But well, yeah, but see, that's like my entire professional career has been in Go. So it's like, you say you've been doing it for 3 years. That sounds great. And then you say you've been programming for 3 years and they're like, oh, never mind. Yeah, I work pretty much exclusively in Go. I have never deployed anything that was not written in Go. I avoid JavaScript like the plague, so I'll stick with Go. I do speak a lot about it. I have done enough machine learning in Go to consider myself an expert at it, which is minimal because nobody does machine learning in Go, right? So I have talked quite a bit about Go and using it, beginner Go, stuff like that. I run the Go meetups, and probably 80% of the streams I do on Twitch are Go centered. And there's like nobody else that does Go on Twitch. Like every time I find somebody, it's pretty much like a rare occasion, and I always try and watch them because everybody does weird either game development or they're working on Vim contributing or they're doing Rust. So obviously I'm missing something. But I decided with the that speaking engagement coming up that I was going to learn Rust, that I was going to speak from a position of authority instead of a position of blind Go bandwagonness, which I still mostly speak from, the blind Go bandwagonness.
It's a good position.
I mean,
Let's start somewhere.
It served me well for the most part. Because Go's the best programming language. But I decided anyway, I was gonna learn Rust, and I was gonna go through and like have little snippets from my videos for you to watch. But it turns out you can only embed into Google Slides from YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And considering that I only had 3 hours to write this talk, I didn't want to just start over. So you don't get the snippets, but they are all available on my Twitch. Highlights do not ever disappear. And so the highlights of me ranting about why Rust is horrible, I'm just kidding. That's not what I ranted about. I'll be there. But it's like when you first start Rust, you see a lot of things that are in common. You start with the fact that you have a set of go-by examples that I pretty much reference daily. Rust, right in their docs, has Rust by example. Right in like the second, it's like the second bullet point on the Rust book website is Rust by example. They have Rust docs, which is very similar to Go docs. They have a lot of things that are just they seem to just copy each other's namings. They have a playground and Go has a playground, and they just pretty much steal from each other
So
nonstop.
there is one thing that Rust has that Go does not have. Do you know what it is in particular? Hint, pink balloon. Every single post on Rust on Stack Overflow has been edited by a guy with a Kirby. And he is one of, that one, what's his name? Chefmaster has edited every single Stack Overflow post with Rust.
Is he still trying to play the Stack Overflow game? Because I thought that was over.
On the internet, nothing does.
Okay.
It's my understanding that Rust in its early days was much more like Go is today, and the change that it is partly in response to differentiate itself from Go because it had green threads, it had memory management, but basically with Go being there and Google being there, they went their own direction. So it happened for Go, Rust made it very different. So I'm not surprised there's a lot of copying in this.
Nah, there is a lot of copying. They literally, while we were sitting there on the panel, Steve Francia, who literally runs he's their product lead, so he runs a lot of their roadmap, literally says, yeah, we stole this from Rust, and we stole this from Rust, and we stole this from Rust. So, obviously they share a lot back and forth.
Should have stolen emails from Rust.
And the cargo compiler it was there. At least it was compiled, and I didn't have to go. It was like, you install cargo and you get Rust, so it felt very comfortable. I did not feel quite as daunted when I initially looked at Rust as I should have been, but it seemed like, look at this. There's like 3 lines. It's 3 lines of actual code here. That if your hello world is only 3 lines, you expect an experience much more similar to Python, not what you actually get when you start learning Rust. But yeah, first thing first. Like I said, with the compiler, Go ships with like a set of tools that you just automatically use, right? You have the test tool that's built in. You have the import tool that imports things into the code. This does not include the modules for managing the dependencies after. But Go import will import the references into your code automatically for you. You have the coverage tool that you can use when you run tests to tell you how much of your tests or how much of your code is covered by tests. There's also benchmarking, as well as the pprof for your weight limiting and speed stuff that comes through there. You have the linter. GoLint is officially deprecated, but it did originally come with the language, and the community. Basically, everything ships with a linter anymore. And GoFumped is obviously comes with it. Cargo has great stuff, but I've only ever used like 3 of the cargo commands. Like I've used all of these Go stuff, but I've only ever used cargo init, cargo build, cargo run. You can correct me if there's more helpful tools.
Yeah.
But I only ever use these.
If you want an answer right now, we can give it, but
No,
you know your experience.
please,
right?
no, I want to know more.
Short version is,
Clippy.
Yeah, I'd say would be the spiritual equivalents to Golang.
And vet, yes, GoLint and vet are grouped together into a single, they're linting tools.
it was only included by default.
Recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, very recently.
Because people can create extensions for cargo, you install and then you can run it in cargo, whatever that extension name was. But Clippy is the only other one I know that's standard.
So you can install you can add, Clippy's an add-on to cargo is what you're saying.
It's shipped with it.
It does.
It's shipped with the standard tool chain, but it is outside of the rest of the proper.
Yeah, just like GoFact or GoStyleCheck.
And cargo test is it runs all your tests.
Yeah, there's a whole community that would be like, all right, what is some weird check that we can add just to make things more protected?
And there's also, is it Rust format or cargo?
Cargo format.
The underlying tool is Rust format. Like the underlying.
See, yeah, I actually have never used that because I was going to get to that later. But the one thing I was able to set up in Vim was the auto format and save.
So you're already using it.
Yeah, I am, just inadvertently. Yeah.
It gets out of your way.
So I can't say I actually type it. But I also never type GoFumped either because it's built into the tools I use, right?
Now, Clippy will not only tell you that something's wrong, but Clippy will also give you an option to automatically correct.
There is a fix functionality. There's cargo fix. There's also cargo Clippy fix.
Really?
Cargo Clippy dash fix. It works. It doesn't work on all of the lids. I don't know what the coverage is, but I've used it to do some migration of code bases without creating the rest of the chain. So
Cool.
yeah, there's a fix functionality for cargo Clippy.
Boom, something I can add.
So imagine the automated functionality of Go import.
No, it sounds like when you're having changes with just basically updates to language or versioning, that's when you've found the most use of that, right? It'll automatically detect changes that come with that and correct it for you. I mean, there's obviously additional uses,
Right.
but that seems like a common one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. New lids will ship with the new version of the REST tool chain. People have been hacking on Clippy, people have been hacking on the REST compiler proper, and new lids come up, right? Sometimes they're important enough that they decide to make it part of REST C. But that migration, having that automated migration is really powerful. I just did this at work where we had over half of the migration done because there was coverage for new lids that were firing from Clippy and from REST C. So it was great.
How does cargo update work? Is that part of the code? Is it sort of like are you talking about cargo Clippy fix or cargo up? Cargo up. So that's a new time, right? That updates all the tools that come with cargo. Sure.
So you
Never
can
used
use
that.
Update functionality.
To update all your dependencies, cargo update.
Oh, okay. So for your locking, your cargo lock, and your cargo
Is that part of your original package or does it store?
I actually don't know the lineage for cargo update. I wouldn't be surprised if it started outside, but I'm not.
I also wouldn't be surprised if it started outside because that's how open source languages tend to work, right? They're like, oh, somebody did this and it's nice. We'll just maintain it for you because it's actually like non-trivial, right?
That's how cargo doc started. There's a user whose name we'll see around called Quiet Mischievous. He started RustDoc just all by his own and made this incredible platform. And in the last couple of years, the Rust community has really embraced it and made it just something official.
I know, they copied GoDocs.
Yeah, and they even took it and made like docs.rs. If you publish a crate to crates.io, you automatically get documentation hosting out of the box.
Yeah, I know. And then Go went and copied that back into their package.dev, but it took them a really long time to ship that. Took them.
Cross-pollination is what makes it wonderful.
Yeah, so when it came to, it took me a long time to figure out how to do package management. I don't know why. It wasn't the TOML and it wasn't the idea of crates. It was the fact that there weren't as many things in the standard library as I expected there to be. I was coming from Go, and Go ships with a lot. You don't really need to use external libraries for like anything. If you really want to be a purist, and some people are. Some people are very much purists. But like, the first thing I tried to do was literally just in Go. It's like the most trivial thing you can do is build an API and just like try and hit API endpoints. I could not for the life of me figure out how to run a simple like git command on an API in Rust. I think I spent like probably an hour and a half trying to do it. There was a guy on Twitch who was literally like feeding me packages and commands, and I still was like, couldn't get it. I was trying to figure out like how to import work, how to do the syntax, how to get my import, my crate to actually import into the thing and get like the TOML to update to the right version and not just anyway.
I watched the recording. The frustration was quite common.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. It was supposed to be as easy as go mod, which is one command, the go get.
Nothing is as easy as Go.
And you want to know, Steve Francia literally said, it's because Go waited till very last to create an imports tool. They got everybody's mistakes.
Yep.
And so like, I mean, to be blatantly honest about it, everybody hated Go because there was no dependency management, and they milked that for as long as possible. And they literally just took from everything, right?
Yeah, that is a generic perfect, right?
Yeah, if they ever get to like full generics. I'm still skeptical on that.
We need emails. We don't need generics. Don't go.
I love generics.
I thought we were talking about politics.
Are generics politics? Yeah, no, I was just expecting, I don't know. I maybe I've gotten a little bit comfortable with Go mod and the ease of just running a single Go Git with, you know, a GitHub tag essentially and pulling down everything I need to the version, and then just running Go mod download and downloading all the associated files. Like, it's just really, I was, you know, it wasn't, the documentation was easy enough to read, the functionality was easy enough to figure out. It just was not as straightforward as I wanted it to be to use an external and another package in the code. And since the standard library didn't have everything that I was expecting, it just really just kind of put a damper on my day. And I think to top it off, the time that I was writing the API, I was also having issues with trying to manage the disparities between Thunderbolt 3 cables and USB-C imports. That it's really bad. Anyway, so my stream was bad. My internet was crashing because Thunderbolt was trying to send all of the data, not over the internet, but to my keyboard. And it was just great. And I just couldn't think through crates. So I said, screw it. And I quit writing Rust and just went to reading about it. And by the time I got through 3 chapters of the Rust book, I finally was able to actually import a crate because they handheld you through it. I will say that I don't know if I did a good job of expressing that here, but the documentation on the Rust programming language and the thought that's gone into explaining the semantics, the vocabulary, and getting people started in the language is very evident, and there's no thought done in that with Go. People, they just give you a little example of codes and they say go. I mean, but Go reads really easy, reads a lot like English, so you can pretty much take that and run really far, right? There's not a whole lot of types. I mean, the hardest thing is error handling in Go, and the fact that you have to write it over and over again, but it's not hard you can pick up any pretty much Go and read it and figure out what it does with programming experience, but not a whole lot of Go training. But Rust realized that it's not necessarily that way, and they've created a lot of tools and a lot of documentation to help people get over that hump, right? Like, all you have to do is put forth the effort and you'll learn Rust. Like, all of the tools are there to learn it. You just have to have probably 3 years of your life to figure it out. At least that's what I've determined. I need 3 years of my life to figure it out. I'll be able to get a job in doing Rust in 3 years, because then people will actually be advertising for jobs in Rust, right?
I can give you a code from your
I'll do it on my Twitch stream, and then you'll get more people joining.
Mutually beneficial. There you go. I'm serious though. I'll send you a code.
I know, and I'm serious. I will do it all online, every single thing.
If she mentioned Switch, she's serious.
And you said that the book was just the Rust programming language book.
Yep. The book.
The
yellow one.
I mean, that's as much as I got from it. Is it's called the book because it is that daunting and intimidating, and somebody put that much effort into writing each of those, like, words. I don't write words. I make videos, so obviously I don't put that much effort. I felt like setting up. I did not feel like I really have a good Rust development environment. I mean, I don't know if that's like even a thing, right? Like, in Go, because of the way it came with this idea of Go path and keeping all of your dependencies in a linear tree of directories, and they have a lot of environment variables. Like, they use the environment variables for Go mod to manage the using modules versus the external dependencies, and they have I can show you. Let me just show you. I learned this today. Let's go into our own thing. But if I do this.
You think that you like the use of environment variables?
No, I'm saying I like the tooling that comes with that. I'm saying doing this. If you write go end and you get 90,000 environment variables that ship with your package, well, I mean, this we can set, this is set, Go proxy you can set, but like most of the stuff just comes in with it, right? Like, that enables a lot of things. Like with the Vim Go plugin, I can do a lot of really easy navigation through the code, through the docs and everything right in the Vim editor, which I know you're supposed to be able to do with Rust somehow. Kind of, I don't know. Anyway, I did the VS Code plugin for Go is it literally generates everything for you. It'll fill your structs for you. It'll fill all of your variables. It'll automatically tag everything for you. It'll automatically format. It uses Delve to do your debugging for you. Like, literally, the VS Code plugin for Go takes VS Code, which used to be a text editor, and makes it into a full-blown Golang rivaled IDE, which is a bit ridiculous, and why I don't use VS Code when I do Go. I only use Vim because I refuse to use an IDE. I know there's a VS Code plugin for Rust. I have that here, but this is the only. Go back. I only have this line in my vimrc. Only that one Rust fumped autosave. Everything else I do in the CLI, and it works great. Like, you don't have to set up a dev environment, I feel like. Well, I can't say I'm productive in Rust. I was going to say to be productive in Rust, but I'm definitely not productive in Rust. But to get started, you don't have to. But to even write one line of Go, you have to have all of these set up. I mean, again, 99% of them come installed with the Go binary.
So
But still.
I'm going to tell you a little cheat, which you may love. Webinstall.dev/Golang.
that will install Go from the official Go repository, not from Homebrew, not from anywhere else.
Oh, I don't use Homebrew.
It'll get the official Go, and unlike the Go PKG installer that screws up your system permissions and puts Go in a system location, it'll put it in your user directory, and it will set the Go bin and Go path environment variables to the home directory. And then you can switch between Go versions and all that stuff. You will not have any conflict that you may have would only be because of some other.
Oh, I don't have conflicts. I don't generally run into any conflict. I've never gotten to a point where I've had, that's a lie. I only have to manage 2 versions of Go. And so it's pretty simple. Just, it's Go 1.8. Go 1.8 had major changes that affect me between 1.8 and 110, but after 110, it doesn't matter. So. And the other thing about Weave that's nice is we're almost exclusively on Go mods, so we don't have any weird dependency problems. So we also don't have to manage versions too much. I've never had that problem. I know that that's something very common though, people having to manage different versions of Go.
Forget the version management, just having it install correctly, and not screw up your system settings. Because the thing that I absolutely hate, and I hate this about Homebrew, and I hate it about almost every tool that exists.
Homebrew does it every time.
With your system settings, and then people get frustrated, they don't know what to do, and they have to reinstall their computer. And
well, I have figured that redone my system settings a couple of times. But I will agree with the fact that installing things by Homebrew, although convenient, can be quite troublesome.
If you install Homebrew from webinstall.net, Homebrew will be installed in a way that it doesn't screw up your system.
See, I haven't done that.
So I do have to use Homebrew on occasion, but and it takes a lot longer, because if you use the stock Homebrew, it doesn't have to recompile all the C code. But if you use Homebrew that's been installed to your local user, it will never screw up your system. Library.
I used Homebrew to install Vim. That's what I used it for most recently.
Why?
Why? Because it was broken. I can install Vim and then Mac Vim and then uninstall. Anyway, it was a mess.
When did you learn Vim? 3 years ago?
Yeah. I've been doing Vim for 3.5 years, just like I've been doing Go.
That comes with Vim, you don't need them.
Well, that was.
Yeah.
No, I thought it came with VI, not full Vim. There's a rabbit hole?
Isn't that what this is for? Anyway.
So I will say that I have fallen in love with the Rustling's exercises. Go has nothing like this. I literally told Steve Francia if there was anything they could steal from Rust, it's creating exercises that teach you how to unbreak your compiler. Not that Go has compiler issues the biggest issue with a compiler in Go is trying to find when you have dereferenced a pointer and made it nil and you don't know quite where it is. Because the stack trace points you to a line that was affected by the nil pointer, not to the place where the nil pointer was instantiated, so you don't know what the pointer actually was. So that's almost the only compiler error that I ever fuss with in Go. Everything else is pretty much me being lazy and the compiler just checking my laziness. That's not how the Go compiler works. I don't feel like the Rust compiler. I do not feel like I'm being lazy when I write Rust. I'm very much trying to actively think and put things in the right place and remember the stupid semicolons that apparently we need, because Go injects those for us. We don't have to write them because the compiler does that for us. And just all those weird and if I have made it mutable or not, or if what was the weird thing when I was the references took me forever to figure out, but it was because of rustlings that I was able to even figure out how references work, because they made me go back and study it 14 times. But But like Go doesn't have anything like this. You're pretty much on your own for figuring out compiler errors, figuring out errors at all, which anybody who's done Go knows that when they created Go, they wanted you to only care about errors, and you literally have to be very explicit about how you handle errors. So this is just like the best thing ever. Pretty much anytime I do Rust, I'm still doing those because they make me feel like I've accomplished something. I don't feel like Rust programs make me feel like I've accomplished anything because I don't get them to work, but I can always get through 4 or 5 more of these exercises and feel really good about myself. And I actually can read Rust now. Like I know what it's doing. So it's still the best thing ever. And Go doesn't have it. So yeah, Go has the only learning tool Go literally has that is maintained by the Go team is this tour of Go. It's 19 slides. And it goes through types and it lets you run them side by side in the playground, but it's really not that thorough. People think I was writing a course, for lack of a better term, a tutorial for people who'd never programmed before to use Go, right? Just because Go is readable, blah, blah, blah. And I had posted it on the Gophers Slack channel, and someone says, why on earth are you writing this? We have a tour of Go. And I'm like, tour of Go doesn't help anybody. Like, if you've never programmed, if you do not have 20 years of experience, and you can just say, oh, this is how you define this thing, and run with it, this is not going to help you. You need something that's like way more explicit and way more hand-holdy and forces you to confront things like errors or things like the compiler, or figure out what your Go path is, which this doesn't even deal with Go path. It's like the worst. Oh, where was my thing? I had a picture. Anyway, I thought I had another picture of that stuff. Anyway, yeah. So like Rust has rustlings, which I feel is very comprehensive and good. And like Go, I mean, they have a ton of community maintained stuff. But community maintained stuff always tends to get it's hard. You have to have money behind it or it doesn't go anywhere. And this doesn't go anywhere either because nobody maintains it. I felt like figuring out the types in Rust was really hard. Go does not have a lot of, I mean, you can define custom types or whatever, but those are always going to map back to like the pretty standard. They only have they only have 2 types of ints. They only have uints, like your bytes are really uints. They don't have a lot of things. They have structs, and then they have slices. Like arrays are still slices. Like everything's either a slice, a map, a struct, or a primitive. Like that's it. That's all you have for Go. And then Rust has like about, I don't know, I felt like there were twice the primitives, all these weird data types. You have slices that aren't vectors and different than arrays, and you have to be very careful about passing those into arguments and using them and defining them in different ways. And then to top it all off, they have a whole different syntax if you want to use generics. And just like, and you don't even think about that very much when Go. You don't think about the types you use. Aliasing them or mapping them is pretty trivial, and people do it way too much, and it kind of drives me crazy. But in Rust, just because there are so many, you have to think about and be very judicious about when you choose a type. You have to be very judicious about how it's going to be used. The garbage collector doesn't pick up your crap for you, so you have to be very, specific about, like, when you're building Rust code. I feel like I'm literally thinking about my data being moved from this little chunk of bits over here to that chunk of bits over there on my SSD card. Like I literally feel like I have to think through all of those movements as my code goes through it, and being aware of how big the type's going to be and the potential of it to grow, and if it's going to be limited, if we're, especially with slices. In Go, you do a slice, and you're like, great, this can get as big as I want. I don't have to care. I can have an entire database in memory inside a slice, and we'll be good. And that doesn't work that way. You have to like literally define 90% of the things as far as how many bytes they're going to use in Rust. Not always. I did read that, but I never got there because I'm still doing the rustling stuff. Yeah, and to top it all off, there's generics, which apparently everybody outside of the Go community really likes, but people inside of the Go community, and by that I mean people like me who are burrowed down deep and completely blind to the outside world because we love Go so much, don't care about generics. Like, I could care less about generics, but people on the outside looking in really want them. And that's why Go keeps trying to implement them. They have something approved and it's in the works, and hopefully they're supposed to have something by Go 118 or 119, but it's not full generics, it's just something like them.
Are you familiar with Lodash?
No.
Well, yeah, because that's just a library that I thought is like the most popular generic library.
I avoid JavaScript like the plague.
Good for you.
I'm
just wondering, because the reason that people like generics is because it makes it easy to write utility libraries that do things like maps and filters and stuff like that, but then it makes your code terrible.
Yeah.
In Go, you don't need generic libraries because you can copy and paste 3 lines and it doesn't need a dependency.
Pretty much. Yeah, I feel like the Rust use case for generics though is pretty good. It's different though. Anyway, I haven't used them yet, so we'll see. I've only been working in Go, so I really never needed to mess around with them. Unfortunately, I don't know if that's fortunate or unfortunate, but it's the truth.
You should continue down other language paths. So you realize
That's why do you think I'm doing Rust every once in a while?
Yeah.
Every once in a while. Now I'm going to be doing a course on it, you know? Now I'm Rust. There's some weird syntax things I didn't expect. I was okay with losing the package statement at the top. The import was fine. Like, if you look at this, you go in there and you think, oh, this is great. Like, I can totally manage that. Like, it's not going to be a big deal. They're pretty similar. And then when you get down to it, this is when I was gonna, when you get down to it, you end up with something, where's my Rust? See, this is Rust by example crates. This is all the Rust by example stuff. You end up with something, oh, macros were the worst.
Yeah, I'm taking on backwards.
But you end up with something that's just like, where's all the struct visibility? You end up with like this, which I feel like I couldn't quite figure out what the heck they were doing with this, with that, but like if you were to, this is also like super simple. But like this seemed a lot more easy to read, a lot more logical. There wasn't weird things. There wasn't like trying to figure out the pubs and then, oh yeah, now we have this weird bracket T, which apparently is a special syntax for doing something weird. Yeah, generics.
It literally means it will copy and paste the code for you. So it will literally open a new file, copy the code, paste the code, and then it will substitute T. There's string of code and substitute T for the type that's used in that.
And what? I mean, I understand the need to have a unique syntax when you're using generics. It just felt like to me looking at it, like now I had to learn the third language, which was Rust with generics, which was different than the Rust I was learning. And that's coming from some place at Go where we don't have generics, so we don't have the extra syntax for that extra case, right? So
there are a lot of languages that use that syntax for generics.
Oh, I'm sure it's very common.
Even the worst language to go to generics.
I pretty much feel.
If you're using C++ or Java, anybody who from C++ or Java,
Or C Sharp.
if you go from there to Rust, Rust is like a big thumbs up.
Yes.
I pretty much feel like, yeah, anything like that, any enterprise language or gross, yeah. I would pick Rust over that any day. But it's still.
Rust is awesome.
I would do Rust over Java like literally all the days of my life.
Yes.
Why?
Why?
Because Java sounds disgusting. Like I don't have good memories of doing Java in high school when I did Java.
It's too close to JavaScript. That's the problem.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's why. But like, and then you have these double colons, which actually are kind of like weird import things. And like the new was weird. And then there's still these stupid semicolons. And then I kept trying to figure out why the heck we actually needed the exclamation point. I know it's important. I know it does things, but it never clicked in my mind why that meant anything, why I couldn't just pull it out.
It's a macro.
Yeah, I got the macro thing after, and now I understand what macros were. But like at the initial impression coming from Go, that really does not have a lot of like semantic messiness. Like it's pretty clean.
Did you know Go used to have this? Not with the exclamation mark, but it used to have a macro for print.
It also used to have semicolons. So Go before 1.0, I pretend like it never existed because then I can't brag about it.
Why? We all make mistakes. It's good to make them before 1.0.
Yeah.
I think Rust maintains the semicolon, not just because of the C history.
Well, and I think
About how you don't have a semicolon.
Right, which is.
no, and the semicolon, like
But they're very structured.
I think, I mean, it's not that confusing anymore. Like once you get used to seeing it and using it, it's not bad, right? Like I'm not saying that it's irrelevant. I'm just saying like when I first saw it, it just seemed like extra stuff you didn't need, right? I don't know how the compiler's actually using it. So to me, I should just be able to take out the exclamation point or like not use it. But like if you compare it to Rust, to some of the stupid stuff Python does when it's trying to do this, I would do it the Rust way all day, every day, like over Python in a lot of ways. But yeah, it seemed like not necessarily a lot of lines, but a lot of finesse in like the short, concise statements to make something happen. Go has a lot of lines because you have to handle every single one of your errors every single time.
But we are getting the question mark up later. I heard rumor that maybe it's not true.
That's might be. I haven't seen the proposal approved with that.
I thought somebody linked into a proposal. But
It might be a proposal, but I'm pretty sure Go gets like 100 proposals every day.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But that's another thing I would do.
So like, present. So just like as a,
Second bullet point, what would you not?
I was gonna get there. Yeah. So like in summary, Go's still the best language, and I still do everything I possibly can in Go. And there are some really strong use cases for things I would not build in Go. I would not do anything embedded in Go. You can, but I would never.
There are people who do Python embedded.
Yeah, I know. That's really the whole reason Raspberry.
Python is
We'll be here all night.
really difficult. It's not Python. Yeah.
So you wouldn't write embedded stuff in Go?
I wouldn't write embedded stuff in Go. I would not write. So Weave has a VoIP phone system, right? That's basically Go and CGo and C++. I would not write that in Go. I'd write that in Rust. There's no they're going to keep it in Go because they feel like there's too much overhead to retrain, but they literally said, but man, we could really do a whole lot better with the existing VoIP C libraries if we used Rust. And I'm like, and anyway, they're actually really stable right now. So they just don't want to like go back to the days where they had bi-weekly daily outages that ruined our whole system, right? Phone's backbone. Other things I would build in Rust. Those are the main ones. I think, that's just what I think about. I'm sure there's other things that I would just say. I mean, there are things I would do. Like we were looking at the other day? We were looking at doing something with Apache Arrow, and your options for Apache Arrow are run it in C++ and integrate with Python, or run the Rust implementation of Apache Arrow and connect with it in Rust. And I would, why deal with C++, right? Like there's a lot of things where Rust works better. And I don't want to build the Go tooling, like the tooling to do it in another language.
Do you see Go and Rust really being in competition for the same developer?
Never.
I see, from my point of view, Rust is main competitor to C++.
Rust, no, I 100%, like, who did it? So Jonathan Turner and Steve Francie did an article about this that they released probably a month before our panel, where they were talking about basically if building an architecture with Rust and Go side by side, right? So you're going to be doing a lot of your heavy low-level implementation, anything that you would have built with C++, right? You'll do in Rust, and all of your like weird appy server junky stuff that Go is great at, you would do in Go, right? And they would be able to work together in the same ecosystem, but do the job that they do best, right? And yeah, and in my case, I 100% agree that the job Rust does best is dethroning C++ and doing all of that stuff. How hard is it to call Rust from Go?
You have to completely marshal your data when you're crossing the sea.
Yeah, it's going to be a data thing. I mean, you can run bash scripts from Go. So as long as you have everything in a bash script, you can do whatever you want. But
Well, Go requires you to marshal the data into its format.
yes,
So every time you cross the boundary, you've got to literally.
Was it how you show that for Java for Node.js talking to Rust?
Neon is very much the same way.
I think, isn't there something weird? Well, now the recommendation is to use WebAssembly.
It depends on your application.
yes. A lot of people are just doing WebAssembly though.
WebAssembly is very useful.
It's harder to Go than it was to use Rust.
I think currently in the ecosystem, yeah.
Go is not,
But
it's not intended to be friendly with other programming languages. It's not intended to be friendly with C. It is a byproduct of necessity that while building Go, they couldn't recreate everything in Go at that exact moment. There's no reason to use C Go anymore.
No,
If you're using C Go,
you're doing it wrong,
C
essentially.
Go instead.
If you're using CGO, you're doing it wrong, and 100% Rust is the better fit.
Yeah, because C Go was literally because they had not re-implemented the entire HTTP stack and like, crypto line.
I thought of another thing I would do in Rust, not in Go, for that exact reason, for the using the C libraries, machine learning.
Oh yeah, like all of that Python crap should go in the garbage where it belongs and should be replaced with Rust. That's stupid.
A friend of mine that works here was one of the first who actually was fundamental in starting the Rust machine learning community, right? It's growing now. He doesn't participate in it anymore. But there's a lot of, 90% of the machine learning that's done in huge enterprise stuff is written in Java or in C. Java just because it's everywhere and people don't want to change a language, and C because it's fast and you're trying. Well, yeah, behind the scenes, or there's a little bit of Fortran.
Really?
Yeah, and SciPy. SciPy has Fortran in it.
Yeah, anything that does linear algebra has got
Fortran, honestly, they have not found anything better than Fortran to do linear algebra. Julia? Oh, don't even get me. They're really. Julia is probably the best mathematical language that is open source.
I almost thought you were going to hate them.
No, that's open source. Like, definitely.
It's using Fortran for linear algebra.
Yeah, but Fortran for linear, like, nothing's better than Fortran for linear algebra at this point. But, I would. Python for machine learning is just because it's easy. But, everything, all of the math, all of the hard stuff is done in C underneath. So why? And a lot of it is done because they're trying to optimize training on the GPU, right? So doing the parallel threading but they have to manually program onto which thread the specific process is taking place, especially with neural networks. They're literally saying this thread does this layer, and that's how they optimize everything, unfortunately, especially in the research field. And I feel like Anyway, I would do machine learning in Rust before I would do it in Go, because all of the good Go libraries just wrap back to C and C++, and that just feels dirty.
What about R?
So I would never do machine learning in R for the one reason that you can't deploy it. Like, it's great for research and not good for anything else. Like, it's a great statistic. Like, it's great for statistical analysis, and that's research, and that's great for business and BI, and I'm done after that.
Great plots.
Yeah, I'm done after that though. So and yeah, no, I really do like Rust. Like, I'm definitely not stopping, and I definitely, like, I have a goal. My personal goal that I haven't told very many people is I want to get Weave to have at least one application in Rust running in production. Like, that's what I want to do before I leave Weave. So I might be at Weave for the rest of my entire life, but you know. But like, I do love Rust. I think it's amazing. I think the stuff that Rust does well, it does better than most other things.
Is there anything that you do in Go that makes you wish you had? I mean, Go does much better at memory management than .NET and Java does.
Definitely.
But compared to Rust, do you ever find something where you think that you feel you're hampering Go because you don't have quite the speed you want on the CPU, or quite
Not speed. Well, so I don't feel like I have attended way too many optimization of Go talks. Optimization of Go on the edge talks. Walmart Labs literally bought an entire company that did Go to optimize their speeds in their edge product. So like, getting speed with Go isn't necessarily the problem. It's the crap you have to do to Go to get the speed, right? You're literally basically removing everything that the compiler does to simplify it, right? So basically the compiler will inject stuff into your Go code, and that slows it down. But if you remove everything the compiler is going to inject, you can get speeds like that. So, right? So like, I don't feel like speed necessarily is what on the CPU is what I'm going to benefit from Rust, but there are things that, for example, we do have a service that I directly work with that does a whole ton of data ingestion and transformation on customer servers while maintaining we're installing it on their MS SQL servers, sometimes 2008 servers. That's a pain. And we're running our stuff in parallel, maintaining an in-memory database in our Go stuff with their stuff, where we have memory constraints. We're doing way too much in there. And I do not think that, and plus we just kind of have this exposed WebSocket to maintain all of our traffic in and out that we hope people don't just discover because, you know, we have just minor permissions on it.
It's SSL.
It is SSL, but you know.
Good.
No, we're not completely stupid. We're just, but it's still not. It was created 8 years ago when we were trying to move fast, and it really hasn't been updated for best practices since then. I just think it's weird that but everything travels through this one, through the web anyway, and it does write backs back, so it does writes to the database and then pulls things from the database and move it while doing all the transformation in line. And every once in a while we'll run into memory issues. Every once in a while we'll get errors we can't read. Like, there's not a whole lot of transparency into their servers to be able to manage that. And the stack traces aren't helpful. We have to literally debug that somewhere else and keep pushing things to it to try to update. And I would really like that to be a whole lot, not have as much business logic in it, be a really stupid, really reliable, not Go app. I don't think that Go is the best app for that, best language for that tool.
Sort of on my next question, what type of bugs do you find Go?
Nil pointer to reference, I don't feel like would happen as much. And exactly. Well, that's what I'm saying, right? Like, that's a runtime thing all the time. That would not happen in Rust. The other thing too, that's popped up recently is more and more people are doing a lot of Go anti-patterns. For example, the gRPC, one of the recent gRPC commit added a runtime error failure on a typing issue. So basically, if you do not add a reference to an interface that implements the gRPC call, it will fail at runtime, not at compile time, at runtime. And that is a compile time check, right? Like this was referenced, this was imported. And that's happening in runtime, and that's because like the Go compiler doesn't have that built in. Like it's not as, I don't know if that's a safety thing or it's just people being reckless. Maybe they worked around it, but I feel like Go does not have a lot of runtime errors, but the fact that somebody was able to introduce a runtime error like that affects everybody that uses gRPC, which is, I feel like a lot of people that use Go, they seem to go pretty hand in hand, kind of makes me worried for people being stupid and introducing additional runtime errors. And I don't feel like that is as possible with Rust, considering all of the crap I've had to deal with trying to figure out what the compiler is doing. And the way that memory is managed in Rust, where you, not just memory, but like you're very methodical about how it makes you think harder. Like Go makes you think more than JavaScript, and Rust makes you think harder. And so you just can't be as stupid. You can probably still be stupid, but not as stupid. People told me that it made you think more, and I was like, try Rust. Yep. I don't run into them very much. I have had them in the past. They are possible, especially with when we do concurrency stuff, right? Go was optimized for concurrency. It happens all the time. They do have the atomics and the mutex locks built in, so you can, if you're very judicious about concurrency, you can mitigate a lot of race conditions, but you'll never be able to remove them because a lot of them you don't see till runtime. Well, I mean, in Go, because they do Go threads, like Go has its own internal threading system. That's literally part of why you run into it.
So first, I want to bring up a comment that was made like 20 minutes ago.
Sorry, I don't have it open.
No. So Peter put in the chat, I think a lot of your Rust pain is caused by, quote, the book. May I suggest programming Rust, safe system, something by O'Reilly. And that might be a holy war.
Did second edition come out?
It just came out, and I think I'm going to get it. It's Programming Rust, Fast Safe Systems Development.
I love books. I was just waiting for I haven't been able to find a good one.
So
not that I've really asked.
And by the way, that Safe Systems O'Reilly book, what I liked was that it was about why, it was full of examples of why Rust is better and safer than the C++, and you almost learn the language just on the side.
You hear that? He said he liked the systems theory book, the O'Reilly one, because you learned a lot about systems and security and stuff, and you just kind of learned the language on the side. Like you picked up Rust while learning the theory behind systems development, right? Did I capture what you were saying?
Yeah, not theory, but yeah, behind the practical examples, yeah.
Okay.
So I'm interested in that because I really enjoyed the book, but I would be interested in another perspective from a different author to see.
Well, it doesn't really help you get started programming. Like if you just want to get in and get your hands dirty, that's not what you're going to get from the book. But it explains a lot of the decision making when in Rust itself, like why things are the way they are, and a lot of like the theory behind it. I feel like it, if you like computer science theory, there's a great book for you right there.
Well, I thought the examples were very practical in terms of that they were examples that helped you to understand, or at least for me, if you actually go through the examples and do the code projects at the end of each chapter, once you get past like chapter 5 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I feel like those.
I haven't got to chapter 5.
Practical.
I haven't got to chapter 5. Yeah, well, I got through 3, and then I just started doing rustlings because it was way easier.
Oh, okay. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed the book.
What is the name of the book for those that are
The Rust programming language.
Steve Clark?
Yeah, but you can literally just go into any web like search engine and go Rust space the book, and it's the first thing that pops up.
Right. So other comments is I think there is one key issue with Go where Rust is really in a different problem space. So Go was developed at a time when we were trying to figure out how to use the advances in CPUs because multi-core CPUs had just been introduced. But almost immediately what happened is for all the areas where you want Go, because Go is not a good desktop system. It doesn't have good interfaces with UI. It doesn't play well. I mean, it plays well enough, but it doesn't really play well with the kind of Electron thing where you're using a browser.
Definitely not. I never needed to, but I wouldn't.
So Go tried to solve this problem of being CPU constrained and using multiple cores, but it ends up getting deployed in environments where there's only a single core. And so a lot of that effort is kind of wasted. And Go isn't really good in places where there actually are multiple cores, like on the desktop. Whereas Rust is really good in places where memory is highly constrained, where you're going to run one instance of something rather than 100 small instances of something that are just delegating work back and forth.
That's what Go, yeah. No, definitely.
And Rust is, but Go does do well at message passing between systems. Go makes that very easy.
Yeah.
But it also makes message passing between CPU cores very easy. It's just that it ends up not being useful because we no longer go to multiple CPUs. But Rust is perfect for something like a web browser, where you are CPU bound, you do have multiple cores, and trying to message pass between 100 disparate systems in a cluster is not a concern. Not to say that you can't use it there either, but Rust is extremely well suited for embedded, for desktop programming, for game programming, and for something like perhaps a web proxy where it really would run in a place where there would be multiple cores.
It also tell your situations when you would or not want right?
Well, I mean, but that's going to be a lot of what it comes down to, right? I mean, like, Go.
Electron with Rust, my RAM usage would go down by like 6,000% because every single app, VS Code, Discord, Slack, Signal, I mean, basically you go down a list, if it's not developed by Mac itself and part of the operating system, every single one of those is like a virtual memory space of 64 gigabytes and uses it literally. And that is an area where Rust could kind of really make a huge difference.
Oh, definitely. And you would never use Go, like, why? I would never use Go in that space. Again.
Well, not that you'd never use it, because
but I still wouldn't,
not as good of an alternative.
it wouldn't be my first choice with Rust. And this, like, if you have a tool belt of 5 languages and you have Rust and Go in the same tool belt, those are situations where I would pick Rust over Go, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are situations where it's just quicker and easier to write some Go code that will do something, and it will serve well enough on a desktop, but it's not the type of things
Yes.
Okay, so should we conclude the presentation and just continue to BS?
Thank you.
Do you want me to get out of the Jitsi too? I don't need to be.
Wait, hold on.
Oh, you need to do your thing? Okay, you can come do your thing. I didn't stop anything. It's still there.
Cool, great. So all I want to do is say thank you very much, Mariah, for coming and presenting. Let's give her another round of applause. I want to say how incredibly ecstatic I am that we have, 11 people here tonight, which is the most that we've had in actually maybe ever.
Your RCP was 15.
We've had like 20 before.
The largest group I saw was 13.
Yeah, I think,
The largest group I saw was 13.
which is great, and we would love to have recruiters, or at least I would love us to have recruiters. I think everybody here would love more opportunities for Rust jobs, so yes, I see head nods. Cool, so anyway, I would thank you very much for coming and leading this discussion and taking us on this wonderful trail. Thank you for all that have come, and thank you that are watching and listening in. Again, if this was useful for you, if you got some value out of it, please give a like and subscribe. And with that, we'll continue a little bit of BSing, but I'll cut the video here and put it into another segment.